Hello everybody and welcome back. My name is Curseof and welcome back to another video. Not gonna lie, this format is starting to get kinda stale for me. So you know what that means. It's time to become my true self, the filthy casual that I am. And it's time to show you guys my dragon collar, my blue eyes, the deck profile. So, let's not waste any time here and let's get straight into this deck profile, showing off to you guys this skill. Obviously, we have Dragon Collar here. This skill was absolutely amazing when Speed Duel's first released. Basically, dragons were the best deck of the format at the beginning. They've fallen off a lot since then, and but sadly we have gotten no real new dragon support, so we're still stuck running this Dragon Collar skill here. Basically what this skill does, once per duel, you can either activate this when you have a Lord of D on field, or you can reveal a flute in your hand, and you can search for whatever the missing piece to your combo is. Honestly, fantastic skill, makes the combo super consistent, but sadly the combo itself has gotten a lot weaker because of new cards that we have gotten to this format. I will get into that when I actually get to the cards. But basically, if you're playing dragons, you still need this Dragon Collar skill. So now that I've showed you guys this bad skill for this bad deck, let's go ahead and get on to the monsters for the deck here. And naturally, this is kind of like a Blue Eyes deck, so we have 3 copies of Blue Eyes White Dragon here. Obviously, Blue Eyes White Dragon is just simply the biggest vanilla beat stick that we have. I think it's the biggest vanilla beat stick in general. So, yeah, you max out on it. You run 3 of it. There's really no other reason in this deck besides that. There is no other purpose for Blue Eyes in this deck besides the fact that it's just a 3000 attack normal dragon monster. And, yeah, because of that simple fact, we have to max out on it. But the next monster is a little bit better. We have 3 copies here of Tyrant Dragon. Honestly, Tyrant Dragon is really good. Being able to attack twice as long as your opponent still has a monster on field after you kill their first monster is a really good effect, and really helps with our OTKs. Along with that, we have the fact that it just can't be targeted by traps, or it can be, but it's going to negate any traps that target it, meaning it's not susceptible to things like Nightmare Wheel and things of the like. Not as relevant of a skill or of an effect because, you know, Lord of D can protect from targeting anyway, but if Lord of D is removed, that effect can definitely come in handy, can definitely come into play. It's really nice to have. More than anything, that first effect, being able to attack multiple times, is phenomenal. It actually helps out the Illusionist Relinquish lock that deck sets up, so yeah, really nice to have Tyrant Dragon. Fantastic card, and honestly just the best dragon monster in the game currently. Still OTKs with its attack plus Lord of D's attack. And yeah, you need to max out on it. Moving to the final monster of the deck here, we have 3 copies of Lord of D. Obviously, you know, this is the guy that you need to, you know, combo off with your skill here. And obviously dragons you need as well. And yeah, have either him or the Flute of Summoning Dragon, and you can search for whatever one you don't need. And you can go ahead and pop off with this skill, with this whole big dragon combo, and hope that you can just outright kill your opponent that turn. This is an OTK deck. I have this really weird thing for OTK decks, and yeah, so naturally you need 3 copies of Lord of D. Moving off into the spells here, I basically telegraphed this. We have 3 copies of Flute of Summoning Dragon. Basically, special summon up to 2 dragon monsters from your hand, as long as you have Lord of D on field. But it's because of this card that the deck has actually gotten weaker, or because of this card's requirements for the effect. This card does not act like your Sage's Stone, where if you activate it, even if they remove your Dark Magician Girl, you can still go ahead and resolve and summon Dark Magician. This card states that you need to have Lord of D on the field to activate and resolve this card's effect. Meaning if my opponent flips up their Offerings to the Doomed, pops my Lord of D in response to my Flute, well now Lord of D hits Grave, and Flute fizzles, also hitting Grave, and they just basically out at my OTK. Which is the real reason why this deck has fallen off so much, this format, is because it is truly, truly so susceptible to Offerings to the Doomed. And that's another thing too, if your opponent normal summons Lord of D, do not Offerings them until they activate the Flute. Let them get their Search off, let them get their Flute, then Offerings their Lord of D, because you can already out one of their Flutes, and the chances of them ever recovering is so low. So yeah, it's just so easy to answer this deck, and that is why it's fallen off so much. I mean, yeah, it lost a lot of its playability when like Moth came out basically, but more than anything, Offerings has almost killed this deck. But anyway, let's go ahead off into our next spell here now that I'm done rambling and complaining. We have 3 copies of Summoner's Art here. This is basically your 3rd dragon of the deck. It's your search card for Blue Eyes, and this is basically going to bring your dragon count up to 9. This is very, very essential because your Lord of D plus Flute and your 9 dragons basically is going to give you a 65.25% chance of opening up with the double dragon combo going second, which is basically how you play this deck. You want to OTK as often as possible, so getting that combo is super essential, and thus we need 3 Summoner's Art. Also, just, you know, it's better to play Summoner's Art for the deck thinning than to play like Red Eyes Black Dragon. This is just the correct option, especially since you might be able to recover if you deck thin enough. Chances are you're not recovering, chances are it's OTK and bust. But anyway, the next spell is honestly, in my opinion, the most important spell of the deck. You need this even more than you need Flute of Summoning Dragon, and that is triple copies of Nightbeam. You might be like, well, why do I need this card? What makes it so important? Well, one, it's a spell card, meaning that you don't need to set it for a turn, which is huge. But more than just that, this is your Offerings to the Doomed answer. Like I said, this deck is beyond susceptible to Offerings to the Doomed. Your opponent goes ahead and activates Offerings on your Flute activation, Lord of D hits Grave, Flute fizzles, and you're basically saying, alright, well, good game, I concede. Let me just give you my little handshake here. But Nightbeam is your potential answer to the set Offerings. Yes, you either have to hope your opponent only set 1 card, or you snipe out the correct card, but nonetheless, you need Nightbeam in this deck at 3, because you need to try and answer that Offerings to the Doomed as often as possible. Whew, okay. And, yeah, for the final card, basically, sadly, although Offerings is our main issue, it is not our only issue. We are also super susceptible to Zoma the Spirit as a huge example, so we do need other back row answers in this deck. And our other back row answer in this deck is 2 copies of Stamping Destruction. This used to be Twister, but then I kind of realized that, like, honestly, Stamping basically does the same thing as Twister, but you can hit potentially your opponent misplaying with an Offering, so they didn't activate it right away. Yes, they can chain it, but you know, they might misplay. Along with that, it is just an extra 500 damage, which can come into play, and overall, you're not going to activate Twister until you have dragons on the field. You're not going to be able to activate Stamping until you have dragons on the field. So which one you run really doesn't matter, but Twister makes you pay 500, Stamping makes you deal 500, and Zoma, you know, killing one of your dragons is going to deal, or being run over by one of your dragons is going to deal you at minimum 2,900 damage. So, you know, life points may be a resource, but keeping them is still important. So, Stamping Destruction is what I opted to go. Honestly, you still could go Twister if you want it. Maybe you're, you know, maybe one of their back row is dead, say. So you're like, well, Twister's better, because then if they Zoma, I know I'm going to hit the correct one. Yeah, you know what? You could definitely argue that way. I'm going with Stamping Destruction. Honestly, whatever you guys want is whatever you guys want. But this is the main deck basically. Just summon out 2 big dragons, whether it's Blue Eyes or Tyrant Dragon. Before you summon out anything or do anything, pop as much back row as you can, and just try to kill your opponent in 1 turn. If you're going up against Dark Moth, if you are playing against Dark Moth, do not take this lightly. If you are playing against Dark Moth and they set a monster, swing with Lord of D first. You have to swing with Lord of D first. Why? Well, 1, if it's a Dekoichi, Lord of D swings over it. 2, if it's a new Doria, you're able to kill your opponent's new Doria with Lord of D, and then they can only pop your Lord of D. If you swing over it with Tyrant Dragon and they pop your Lord of D, well, now you missed out on OTK because Blue Eyes itself is not OTK. So playing against Dark Moth, if you see a Lure of Darkness in a Moth deck and they set something, swing with Lord of D first. If you don't see a Lure of Darkness, honestly, it might be Warrior Moth. I just swing with the Dragons first, especially since Warrior Moth is going up in overall playability, because Warrior Moth is the better Moth variant this format. Anyway, yeah, this is the main deck. It's OTK or bust, but anyway, let's go ahead and move off into the side deck here. So, moving off into the side deck, to start things off, we have 2 copies of Offerings to the Doomed ourselves. Offerings is such an important card in this format, and it is basically your answer to not get OTK'd by Conflict Warrior, basically. If you go first, if you go second against Conflict Warrior and they have a chance to set up a monster and you can't go for the OTK, or they do answer your Lord of D because you didn't have any backup, having Offerings to the Doomed is super, super essential here. You need to basically be able to stop their OTK. So we have 2. Honestly, is it really that great? No, it's not crazy, but it's useful against the OTK. It's okay against Moth, but it's honestly still not that great. It's kind of just here because it can be useful, and there isn't really that many other useful cards to add to the side deck. Along with that, basically, if you're going up against a deck that just doesn't run back row, which there are a few decks that do that, sorry, my grammar is bad. For example, Relinquish is a deck that's not going to have any back row. Offerings of the Doom is phenomenal for that matchup. Speaking of going up against decks without any back row, Burst Stream of Destruction. This is basically another card that you're going to replace your back row hate with for decks without, back row. Because this is just, you control Blue Eyes, destroy their entire field, which makes Blue Eyes even a little bit more playable in the deck. So, 1 Burst Stream of Destruction. It comes up sometimes, not very often. Honestly, the spells in the side deck are mediocre at best, but so is the deck. Anyway, this is the actual important side deck card here that you definitely want to have in your side, and that is 3 copies of Dust Tornado. Why do you want 3 copies of Dust Tornado? Well, let's start off with, for example, I gave Relinquished as a deck that doesn't run back row. So that means Night Beam is basically useless against Relinquished. But what isn't? Dust Tornado, because you can pop the monsters that they suck, which is super, super relevant. Along with that, if your opponent makes you go first, like you, for example, you won game 1 or you won game 2 and you know you're going to go first, side out Stamping. Side out your 2 Stamping Destructions for 2 copies of Dust Tornado. Because you're going first anyway, so if you can open up with a Dust Tornado and set that card face down, that gives you another option to potentially pop a Offerings to the Doomed alongside Night Beam, while Stamping Destruction isn't that useful for popping Offerings. So you're basically going to side these out if you're going first in a matchup for the Dust Tornadoes. Because basically, Stamping cannot be an Offerings out, but Dust Tornado can be, and that's basically it. And honestly, if you draw another Dust Tornado, like when say you're going first, you didn't draw a Dust Tornado, so you pass. And then you're going second, and your top deck is a Dust Tornado. Honestly, is it really that big of a deal? If it wasn't a Dust Tornado, then it was a Stamping Destruction. Either way, you weren't outing Offerings to the Doomed. So, which one you top deck really doesn't matter, but Offerings is going to give you a better chance of being able to OTK when you go first. So, you're going to want that Dust Tornado. I said Offerings. You're going to want that Dust Tornado in the side deck here, for sure. Definitely the most important card in the side deck. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is going to conclude this deck profile. It's the standard extra deck. Run the standard extra deck. Actually, I don't even run the standard extra deck most of the time, because it's just easier to type in 1000 on Dueling Book, because 1000 Eyes Restrict and 1000 Dragon come up, and then I can just get them both in there easily without having to search up every individual card when I'm not running Waking. If you're running Waking, though, this is your thing. This is what you gotta play. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you did enjoy, please hit the like button down below and also subscribe. I am doing a lot of content. I am doing bi-daily videos. You're actually getting daily videos for the remainder of this week and all of next week because of some little special events that are on the go. And yeah, I actually have some really, really big plans for my channel. I'm working on some stuff right now, and I'm really excited to bring it to you guys when it is all finished. But anyway, that's a wrap, guys. Like I said, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you guys all tomorrow for another video. Peace.